Manisha Dua and the panel moderator for today's session on creating safe and secure e-learning environments being organized by CyberPeace Foundation.
Can I request all the panelists to please give a brief introduction about themselves to our audience who are present in the event? Karnika ma'am, can we start with you?
Surely. I'm Dr. Karnika Seth, and I'm a practicing cyber lawyer, and I'm into a lot of policy making. So we make policies, for the cyberspace and at various levels, and we are very closely working with child safety and anything to do with children protection, especially in the online learning environment. And I'm also an author, so I write books on cyber law, and then into trainings. So I'm an official trainer to the National Police Academy and the Judicial Academy, and also set up an NGO called FIRE, where we do a lot of trainings for schools and academia and teachers and parents and children, explaining them the threats on the cyber, best practices to safeguard themselves online. I'm very glad to be on the panel today for discussing this, how online learning environment is changing, particularly in the COVID times. And we're going to be discussing the role of parents, teachers, and the role of children themselves in participating in safe learning online environment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, ma'am. It is an honor to have you with us in the panel. And let's hope for a fruitful discussion that the audience take away quite a bit of information from you. Thank you so much. May I request, I'm so sorry for the disturbance. May I request Malini ma'am to please introduce herself?
Malini ma'am, you're on mute. Kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah. So very good afternoon. Delighted to be a part of this panel. I'm an educationist. I head the Army Public School. I'm the principal of the school. And I've been in the teaching profession for over 30 years. So much has changed in these 120 days. So I'm here to talk about our experiences, the journey that it has been for the schools over these lockdown times. And I'm sure there's a lot that we all can contribute to each other. I'm a postgraduate of Delhi University. Chemistry is my subject, and I've moved on to education, and currently I'm working on a PhD thesis on artificial intelligence in assisting learning among students. I'm a part of the CBSE advisory board. I'm a part of the many other boards that are involved in making policy decisions. Currently, I'm the chairperson of the National Progressive Schools Conference, which is a body of eminent schools, a collection of conference of 189 schools, leading public schools of Delhi. And the Army Public School that I head is also a part of a large chain of schools, 137 schools across the country. So there's a lot of diversity with which I work, and the environment brings in a lot of variety. And today I'm here to talk about our journey, the school's journey in this very challenging time, and how we've moved on and answered to the call of duty as teachers and educators. Thank you, and very happy to be a part of this discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll start my video.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Malini ma'am. We would now move on to Madhu ma'am. May I request you to please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Moni. All my co-speakers and all dear colleagues who are participating in this 1 hour seminar, webinar, whatever you say. So just a brief introduction that as Malini, she belongs to the school education, I belong to higher education, but I have nothing to do what Karnika is doing, that is the law aspect of it. So no knowledge of that area. But of course, the education part, I relate myself to Malini. I did my master's in home science, then PhD from Jamia Millia Islamia in education technology, taught there, and then moved on to one of the largest open universities in the world, that is Indira Gandhi National Open University. Headed few divisions there, and then I decided to take a break from IGNOU for 3 years and join this international organization. This is Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia. This is our office is the Asia office, which is Commonwealth of Learning. We cater to the Commonwealth countries in Asia. So we work basically how to improve the quality of open universities as well as the formal system, and concentration is on the technology, use of technology. So I have just joined me almost 1 year. I have been with SEMCA and doing a few things which are very important, and especially during this little bit experience I had for online training during this pandemic period. So maybe we'll share a few things along with my co-speakers. So once again, thank you so much to Nisha for inviting me, and of course, meeting all of you and of the participants, colleagues who are attending this 1 hour webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible now?
Absolutely, yes.
I'm so sorry for the disruption, and it's Murphy's Law, technology fails to when it should not. And so briefly introduce myself. Hello everyone, and I'm Nisha Dua, and the panel moderator for today's session, whose audio failed some time back. So today's session is on creating safe and secure e-learning environment, being organized by CyberPeace Foundation. And the panel, our amazing panel has already introduced themselves. And to just set the context for the session, we will start with the conversations now, and which will be kicked off by asking questions that draw some of the strategies and learning. And then in the second half of the time today, we will open up the floor to give audience an opportunity to ask specific topics related, the specific questions related to the topic. And does that sound good? Okay, great. Then let's get started with the session. And so to set the context here, COVID-19 pandemic has created huge disruptions in our lives. It has brought several health and economic concerns, but has also caused a major shift in education sector, which has been among the hardest hit by current lockdown. And it is estimated that more than 1.8 billion children have been affected by the closure of schools and colleges globally. And in India, it is more than 500 million students who are actually not able to go to school. But learning must never stop. Overnight, the schools and colleges were forced to transition to a new medium of online learning, which till then was only an experimental endeavor. Virtual learning is not the next best thing now, it is the now big thing now. Though online lessons have emerged as a go-to solution for education institutions, but the transition to a totally new format of learning must surely not have been easy for schools and colleges. So we are here to discuss how this transformation was made possible overnight. What were the challenges and learnings? And most important, what security measures need to be adopted to ensure the safety and privacy of student data going ahead? So the amazing panel will be sharing their insights about the virtual learning initiative. So since the panel has already introduced themselves, should we move on to the discussion, please? If it's fine?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Ms. Malini Narayanan, who's the chairperson of NPSC and also the principal of Army School, founder principal of Army School, Shankar Vihar. Ma'am, our compliments to all the school leaders and teachers who have responded so positively in this hour of crisis by donning new hats of digital educators. we at Cyberpeace Foundation send our compliments and congratulations to the school. As NPSC chairperson, kindly convey a gratitude to the school leaders and teachers. But I'm sure that this transition would not have been at all easy. Expecting the pedagogue to suddenly make the change from traditional classroom setting to a very different online setting. And as leader of the school, it must have been a tremendous task planning and implementing totally new and untried virtual learning models. So could you, ma'am, could you please share about this journey from traditional to this new way of education in just 2 to 3 months? Malini, ma'am, please.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'm so glad that you decided to compliment us first, because we always felt we were the unsung heroes of this entire pandemic, because the corona warriors were the doctors, but the teachers who sweated, right through this phase didn't get their due recognition. So every forum that we can compliment them, I think they deserve every bit of it. I must tell you that the journey of these 120 days that we stand on was a absolute roller coaster. There were moments of high and of course many moments where there was a lot of anguish and worry regarding whether we were headed in the right direction. So I would like to flash back to March, when all of a sudden we were told to close the schools. And when we closed the schools, when the results were not even declared, the final exam results were not declared, the children were actually writing the last phase of their exams, many of them. And finally and abruptly, we just closed one day and packed up everything and went home. And we didn't really know when we were going to get back. So, but keeping an eye on the international scene and all our schools, and since I belong to the organization of the 189 leading public schools with a lot of international connect, we knew that it was not about days, it was not about weeks, it's a long haul. So we immediately got into action and started exploring the avenues that we could find to connect with the parents first. Technology and handling technology was not the biggest challenge for us. So I would talk about education and schools in two dimensions. One is, of course, us, the public schools, and the other is the schools that are not so privileged, right? So I would first touch upon us. All of us had, our learning management systems. We are all technology-driven schools, and we never had of training teachers on technology. But what was new was this finding of platforms, and all that LMS or the learning management system were all safely encoused in our schools and was not accessible to us. So that is the time when we really felt this, saying, oh my God, all my learning systems are locked in school. How do I now reach out to the children? So the entire process of exploring platforms which were already existing. And that is the time when we discovered that there was so much more that we hadn't really discovered in our journey as teachers. And that was a great revelation, I must tell you. So adversity brings in a lot of opportunity. And I think we've converted this and leveraged the opportunity brilliantly. So from small baby steps, from trying out WhatsApp videos to moving to Skype, then moving on to Zoom, and getting badgered on Zoom, worrying about Zoom, and then moving on to more secure platforms like Google Meet platform, etc. But you would be happy to know, between that 18th of March to 26th of March, we were on air with the children on 26th of March, starting our classes of 10th and 12th. And I think 10 days of grueling training, understanding how the systems work, was, I think, a brilliant move. And teachers are always lifelong learners, and it can't be more true than this time. So we are now on a self-learning mode, where, of course, we helped each other. There was peer learning, a lot of collaboration, interaction between schools, not just seeking help here. We reached out to all the IT firms and platforms, and I'm very, very happy to share. And I would like to afford my compliments and my grateful thanks to Google, Microsoft, who just opened their doors for us and came in to train our teachers free of charge. Of course, we'll talk about that free a little later, subsequently. And so therefore, there were two professions who were working so hard, the doctors and the teachers. And I'm sure you've seen amazing pictures of how the teachers on WhatsApp, about teachers looking distraught, tired, and haggard with all this online teaching. This was, of course, the transformation for us, for the public schools, was magical. But I would also, at the same time, like to throw light on the millions who are devoid of this opportunity. You know, while we are grateful for the facilities that we've got, we are terribly anguished about the numerous children who've been out of school. And never before was this digital divide so gaping and so wide. And of course, now we are seriously worrying about the learning gaps that it would cause. 4 to 5 months of not accessing anybody who can teach you something new, a new skill being taught, and a revision of what has been done. I think that's our biggest anguish. So I think it's been a satisfactory journey for us, but there's a lot to be done, of course, and we all know that. Yeah. Thank you, Nisha. Would you unmute, please? Would you unmute, Nisha?
I think she has a problem with the audio in the device itself.
Nisha ma'am, I would request you to remove your headphones. Disconnect your headphones and speak. No, you're not audible, ma'am, even now. Okay, if the panelists allow, may I request to start the session, if it is okay with you, Karnika ma'am, Madhu ma'am, Malini ma'am?
That's fine, that's fine.
Yes. Yes. So let's just begin with the session. And Malini ma'am, maybe you can just take over. Our audience is already ready and they're here.
I think Malini
Shumoni, I've just finished speaking. Now I'll request Madhu perhaps to, give her take on how this whole journey has been of these 120 days that we've stayed at home.
Absolutely, ma'am. Madhu ma'am, welcome. Welcome to the session. Let's begin the session.
Thank you, Malini, and thank you, Shumoni, for this and getting into what we have done, what we achieved, definitely. So I'll begin with one point. Is online learning, if we say, there was earlier also pre-COVID, but the only thing was it was neither accepted by the policymakers, I can say governments, world over. Maybe certain advanced countries like USA or Canada or Netherlands, they were doing online because like University of Phoenix was established because it's an online learning since 1976. But definitely the governments, they were not ever ready to accept online learning before COVID. But suddenly, I don't know, this was a silver lining, maybe I say, post-COVID, everyone accepted online learning. Everyone accepted distance education, which was considered as the second grade format of the learning, but everyone accepted, and which was equated to a correspondence education earlier. So not only the governments accepted, it was really surprising that heads of organizations, whether it was higher education institutions, universities, or it was schools, whosoever, so it was accepted by the heads of organizations. Then if you come to the next level, teachers accepted it. Malini very rightly said there are two categories of schools, where she is a private, the whole group of schools which are private schools, and there is a whole group of schools which are the public schools. So in both the schools, teachers accepted it, whether they were trained or they were not trained. Few schools, the private schools, they were using technology. It wasn't that they were not using technology. They had smart boards, they had this Moodle LMS platform, which Malini was talking about, and so on and so forth. They had videos. The children, those who come to the private schools, the environment, the home has it, they were used, like parents were like, they were what to use, which videos to use, and so on and so forth. So suddenly teachers accepted this online learning, and the last and not the least, students accepted it. So the acceptance became the major point of that, what online learning is all about. Now, because I have made few slides, so I will share those slides. And Nisha told me to talk about 2-3 points, which I will just highlight those points, what she has pointed out or talked to Malini, gave a question to her. So I'll just share my slides. Hopefully it will work, and questions later on. So, okay, thanks. Where are my slides? Yeah. Right, okay, so I hope you can see the slides now. So the topic of this today's discussion webinar is creating safe and secure e-learning environment, which I'm sure the detailed Karnika will talk about it, but little bit about what my experience is all about, or what we need to see. So as already Nisha has talked about, there are different figures all over. What is the impact of this post-COVID? We are not talking about pre-COVID, what has happened. The impact was almost 250+ million school students. They are now staying at home. In India, there is 1.4 million schools in the country which are absolutely closed. This is, I'm talking about school sector. If you say the higher education sector, 900+ universities, all closed. 30,000 colleges, 30,000+ colleges, all closed, and other organizations which we are not talking about. So everything is closed. The overall picture, if we talk about the world, it is 1.2 billion children in 186 countries, all closed. So, and what the rest, Malini just talked, cancel all the school examinations. So that was the impact of this COVID. Now I will very quickly run through it. So immediately once it was closed, the governments, especially the Indian government, they came into action, and they started a lot of initiatives which were but people, again I repeat, people accepted those government initiatives. So immediately the government of India came out with this Pradhan Mantri E-Vidya program launched. E-Pathshala was launched, which has a lot of material. I will not talk about, because school education teachers and principals, those who are participating in this webinar, they all know about it. The second major initiative government of India took was amazing. 12 DTH channels which were dedicated right from class 1 to 12. Means each channel, each class has one channel. Just imagine the digital initiative government launched just in few days of this COVID-19. Now coming, the usage of this, Malini will be able to tell, because there are very few research studies that whether the students they are using or they are not using, how effective it is being used, and what is the learning, which is the main concern of all educators. So another initiative, all of you know, schools which they are using is Diksha, which is a platform and which has almost 80,000 ebooks. So because Nisha said, how the students who are at the remote place, those who don't have access, how they are going to have an access. So these platforms were very useful, like Diksha, almost 80,000 ebooks, and right from class 1 to class 12. This is another very important NROER, National Repository of Open Education Resources, which NCERT had developed before post-COVID. So almost there are 14,000 plus files which have audios, images, videos. How many are viewing? That was a question of actually learning analytics or a data analytics, which maybe will come little later on, and what research studies. This was another initiative, ePathshala, which had almost 186 audios, 200 videos, and number of books. I will not get into the detail. It is given, you can go and see the website, but lot of material for the school education. So and there are certain in higher education, again, I will not get into the detail. People, they know SWAYAM, I will highlight because it has courses for school education also, which are all online courses. Sakshat, DigiLocker, all of you know. SWAYAMPrabha. SWAYAMPrabha is again a DTH channel which has exclusive school education channel and exclusive agriculture, lifelong learning, open and distance education, and so on and so forth. So these are certain. Virtual labs was another initiative which was earlier there, but in higher education, these initiatives were started. So now what happened, like Malini said, they went around, searched around, which are the various platforms and so on and so forth. Companies, they came to the schools like Microsoft, Google, and so on and so forth. But if I know, children were much smarter than we, the teachers, and the policy makers. They knew everything. So what happened, these companies like Microsoft Team, they went to the schools and they said, Microsoft Team is the best, you use it, you buy this is a whole package, Office 365, and so on and so forth. They were learning management systems. And let me tell you, learning management systems, some of the private schools, they were using it. For if I can just take an example, MET was using it before post-COVID. They were giving all their learning outcomes on the learning management system. They were posting homework on that, and so on and so forth. So learning management system was there, and one of the best, and not only schools they are using, the higher education institutions they are using, because it is an open source software. So learning management systems came in, Google Classroom came in, then there was a television, as we said, SWAYAMPrabha. I don't know whether students, school education or even higher education students, they are watching those programs, because there are certain other places where the students, they can go. I will come out to with it later, and so on and so forth. These were as Malini has already said, so schools, they rush towards these platforms, and Zoom became the topmost. And with whatever the thing at the moment going on, political or otherwise, people, they said don't use Zoom. But again, I'm not promoting. Zoom has a very secure platform, which I'm sure Karnika is going to talk, which I'm not going to do in detail. So all these platforms were being used for training, for online learning, and so on and so forth. So coming to very important aspect is that when I said ePathshala or NROER, National Repositories. So when we are talking about repositories, there is very important concept which is called open education resources. So open education resources came as a boon during this time. So what are these open education resources? I'm sure all of you know that, which are materials which are freely available. Like if we search anything on Google, we see lakhs of websites. We tend to copy from there, or we tend to take out from there, which is not right, because all the material are copyrighted. So, but that's what open education resources are, that you can take it from there. These are reusable, these are digital in any form, and so on and so forth. I will skip this definition, just highlighting is that these are the technology-enabled learning material which any individual can have access to it. So the movement again started in 2002 through UNESCO, and several organizations, they came into it. So just highlight again what are the advantages of using these open education resources. It gives access to the learning. It can be scalable. So if like for example, all NCERT books which are on NCERT website, they are under OER. There is a difference. You can easily download it, but you cannot change it. If suppose West Bengal State Board wants to use it, or Gujarat State Board wants to use the same things, one cannot do it, because they have to it has to have a Creative Commons license, CC license. That's an altogether different issues. But it can be scalable. It is a major innovation. And the last point which I want to highlight is, whether I talk about school education or talk about higher education, these open education resources are very cost effective. Cost effective in the sense, many studies have shown that out of 10 students, 7 students, they don't buy textbooks because they are too expensive. And if you say the NCERT books, they are quite reasonable priced. But in countries like Africa and so on and so forth, students, they don't even have that much money. And maybe in some of our rural schools, maybe that is a situation where one has to find it out. So those are the advantages of open education resources. And then my organization, Commonwealth of Learning, during this post-COVID, came out with this keeping the doors of learning open. And we came out with the repository of all these things where these resources are available. You talk about videos, you talk about like Khan Academy is an open education resource. Many students, they go and talk about it. So, and another initiative what we did, Commonwealth of Learning did, was OER for COVID support initiative. So all these things, the governments, they decided, organizations, international organizations, they started, UNESCO started. They have complete distance learning solutions. This is just a screenshot of their website. Several material are available on the UNESCO website. So basically what the point was, that the students as well as the teachers, they don't suffer because they're not going to the schools now at the moment. So all those resources were available. Then very important, the videos aspect of it. Malini said they started creating videos which were put up on WhatsApp, and the smart boards which was left behind in the schools, which had those videos, they could not be utilized, but they were very smart enough. And now Shah Rukh Khan is advertising for Byju's. And you see, if I see children around myself, I see children going and looking at these videos at these websites. Again, let me tell you, I'm not promoting anything.
Thank you so much, Madhu ma'am. Am I audible now? Yeah?
Yes, please.
Yes,
Nisha, you are audible.
Just to share with you, I think the whole group is here. I was trying some fancy earbuds, and which created problems. So the learning is to keep the technology very simple. Okay, keep the doors of learning open. Madhu ma'am, you touched upon it, and it is so beautiful. I think this phrase of keep the doors of learning open, we will totally take away from Madhu ma'am's presentation. Ma'am, I hope your presentation was finished and I didn't disturb you in between, or there
are 3-4 more slides, and I will just quickly run through it. So
ma'am, it's absolutely fine. We will wait for those. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so community radio, as Nisha told me, talk about community radio. Community radio basically is not being used these days for the school education or higher education, but Government of India has started saying that use community radio. Yesterday only, day before only, the Government of Uttarakhand, Government of Uttar Pradesh, all of they said that we will have a dedicated community radios where students will learn, all the courses will be put into audio programs and students they are going to learn, and which is going to reach the last mile. That is the basically issue of the community radio. And community radio were not so much popular, but now because of the internet bandwidth in the rural areas and so on and so forth, governments are deciding to go on to community radio. I will not talk much about it, but very important, just 3-4 issues which has come into for online, which come in Karnika, I'm going to sure she is going to touch upon it, that what online has created an isolation. Students' concentration is, we need to see how they are going to concentrate once they go back to the schools. Malini has already touched about the high and low achieving students. There will be a lot of gap between them. And of course, a fear among the students will be there. So I think I will just end here. Security issues, Kanika is going to touch upon it. Last is that already, I'm sure Malini knows about it, already NCERT and UNESCO has developed this booklet, just a 4-page flyer sort of a thing, or a booklet, whatever you call it, on safe online learning in types of COVID. If you see, NCERT and UNESCO has developed it. All schools must be taking care of it, because we need to have our students secure. We need to have our data secured. Very, very important aspect. With this, I end the presentation and thank you so much.
Thank you, Madhu ma'am. We applaud the policy makers and educators to make sure that learning must go on and the learning divide does not get widened by the digital divide. And you just ended with that booklet by UNESCO. And I must share over here that yesterday was the social media day. And Cyber Peace has a vision of safeguarding and supporting student safety in the schools, while they are learning online and even otherwise. So we have launched e-Raksha competition just yesterday. That competition is open for the schools and colleges, and it's a very simple competition. The students and the teachers and it's for student, teachers and the caregivers, and they just have to visualize and or they just have to think about, reflect what online safety means to them, or how they can be safe online, or they need to develop some kind of apps and some kind of posters depicting, how we can be safe online. So a very creative contest we launched yesterday for schools across India. This is e-Raksha 2020. e-Raksha 2019 was a huge success where we got thousands and thousands of entries, which we actually found very difficult to manage. So creating awareness amongst the student, for keeping themselves safe and secure online is very, very important, especially in the times when the students are spending so much of time online also for e-learning. And coming to Kanika ma'am now, I'm sure she has a lot to share. Kanika ma'am, see, the schools did not have any time for transition, which actually happened overnight. So there were no SOPs or policy documents or any safety guidelines developed by the school. However, student data is very, very precious. So can you just share that how the student data can be misused and what are the measures to protect the data and the personal information of students and teachers online? We also have to understand that this change was thrust upon the schools and they responded. However, if the guidance by experts like you can come along now, the schools can introduce those in their processes. Kanika ma'am.
Thank you so much, Nisha. I think Malini ma'am and Madhu ma'am have just put the state very, very clear, and their perspectives on this online e-learning and how the schools have grappled with this challenge and done so well is been put very, very eloquently and I think very lucidly. So thank you for giving the entire perspective from your viewpoint. I totally agree with the way the schools have taken on this challenge and the way they have taken up the technology and adopted the various techniques that they're actually using today. And Cyber Peace, thank you again once more for having this discussion, because it will add value to what we are doing today and how we would proceed further from here on. So I think when it comes to online e-learning platforms, the question posed was on data protection specifically and privacy. So in our country, you will appreciate that privacy is a fundamental right. And so when we say privacy, not only does it include your right to share information about yourself, that is informational privacy, but also what is there in your gadgets. It could be any kind of sensitive information, whether it is photographs or pictures or your password details or your credit card details. And therefore, when children today, especially during the COVID times, are using internet through an online e-learning platforms, it is a challenge not only for parents, for teachers, as well as students. I think all of them are in the ecosystem. We cannot really segregate any participant from here, because everybody has a role to play. So security becomes paramount, not only to secure the children, but the same gadget is being used by parents also. At times they're using their handphones, they're using their mobile and other networks, gadgets, iPads or computers. So we have to ensure that entirely every information in the system is secure. Now, coming to the law point, there is a law in the country. We have IT Act, which is the Information Technology Act, which is a special legislation. And there is not only a constitutional mandate that there is a fundamental right of, just like you have free speech right, you have a right to privacy, but also there are provisions in the IT Act to protect your data and to protect what you are willing to share. For instance, when anybody collects any kind of data online, a service provider, it could be a video conferencing platform that a school is using, they ought to take into account, they have to have a clear terms of conditions of use. There have to be clear privacy law guidelines, privacy policy of that video conferencing platform. Often we do not see the terms and conditions of apps or other platforms we are using. And I feel as a parent, as a teacher, as a student, one must read those, because they have to only take away that much information that is needed to provide that service. Beyond that, if you're giving away information like your contacts, your gallery, your videos, that permission may not be needed by that video conferencing platform. That is a flagging issue number one, because we are adopting LMS. A lot of schools are adopting learning management systems today. We must ensure that it comes from a credible source and is a reputed company with good security. We were talking about even Zoom earlier. Now, the problem was with some security patches, which I believe they have patched up to a great degree, because after certain gave their advisory that one has to be cautious of this platform, they have inculcated a lot of good security features. And thereafter, people have also been made aware by the certain that they have to use lock system. For example, if somebody has entered the meeting room, the children have all marked their attendance, the teacher has seen everybody has come on board, they have to lock the meeting room. And the presenter writes, the host writes, how secure we can make that. The password, unique passwords can be given. Encrypted passwords have to be there so that they're not hacked into easily. So these are the kind of things which the schools have to understand when they're adopting any LMS. So that's very crucial. Even if they're adopting apps, for example, they have to be cautious of which apps they are recommending to their students, or adopting a customized version themselves. So that's number one. In the online learning space, this is not the only challenge. Wi-Fi, how secure is the Wi-Fi? Are they using WPA 2 or 3? That is the protocols which we are adopting in today's times. The connection of a home should be secure. The gadget that you're using, the OS, the operating system, has to be updated. Then whatever antiviruses and anti-spywares that you can use, credible antiviruses and anti-spywares need to be used, and on a regular basis. Then filters have to be used by parents. A lot of parents are not aware, and sometimes they are aware and yet they because they don't understand sometimes technology that well. They are a little hesitant in adopting the filters or even simple settings on browser level to only give them child friendly or child user friendly information and not adult content which is not fit for their viewing. So we can actually filter those content even at the browser level. If you're using Chrome or you're using any other browser, you can actually set it even at that level. Then there are other things like the usage of social media, even for teaching or research. There are a lot of times we are using online resources. If you are using social media platforms, for example, a WhatsApp group, one has to see, a teacher needs to be a part of that, because there are a lot of growing instances of bullying we have witnessed in the last few, I would say, weeks. And that the school needs to adopt a clear policy, not only with regards to the LMS that they are using, but also with regards to the social media policy of the school. How children are going to be using social media, the netiquette as we call it, and anti-bullying policy in the school. In the last few weeks, we've been approached, and I've actually drafted a lot of these policies because the schools realize that they don't have the right set of documents to give them the children and the parents a blueprint of what they expect from these online classes and how they need to be conducting themselves online. For example, as a parent also, I can tell you that there are children, who try to do mischievous things, like they'll put up the online class, they'll join it, and then they'll vanish after putting the video off. So these are some protocols. You have to tell the kids you have to be visible and you cannot put your video off. And the schools also need to be a little mindful, because the children are going through a lot of stress at this point. So are the teachers. So, keep, say 2 hours, 3 hours of classes, and maybe with some gaps also in between, have a yoga session, have a mindfulness session in the morning, because I feel that there's a lot of strain that they all are going through. So apart from that, I would recommend giving them a cyber safety or a workshop, where the children need to be aware, not only just have a policy document, but in a very easy language. Maybe a school counselor also can guide, or be a part of an expert discussion, that they can have with a security expert. So that's important, because they will understand the threats online. I will flag a few. For example, there were a few instances in the past few days of, bullying a girl, and there were photos exchanged by the girl with another peer, and that person uploaded those after morphing them on several sites. And the parent and the child was, in a trauma, because when they realized this has happened, how to block it. Once there's a footprint like this, it's very difficult to get it out of the school internet. There is always a way, a place where it is stored. Even after deletion, you might have a fear of it's being repeated. So sextortion rackets are happening. The boy started bullying the girl and blackmailing the girl. So these are real life examples I'm sharing with you. Apart from that, we have seen the boys' locker room case also come up in the last few weeks. So these are the things which we have to tell the children. They're not supposed to click certain selfies which are personal in nature, very personal, which you don't want others to see, and not to circulate any content like that to anybody, be it whoever the person is. So these are the tips which also need to come in a policy document from the school as a guideline. And I think it's very essential for all stakeholders. Even as parents, it's a duty to understand and now embrace technology. We cannot run from it anymore. So as parents also, like teachers have kind of embraced the technology, children have adopted to it. Now parents also need to do that, and that there's a work from home culture anyway. So even if they take security measures, they will not only protect themselves and their information, but also the kid. So that's very, very essential. Phishing rackets are happening. Phishing came about because there was a credit card fraud. A child was enticed by a stranger to give away OTPs, saying that this was from a call from a particular phone company, a broadband company, and he gave away his credit card details. There were unauthorized debits made into his account. So this is fake links, for example. Fake links, educational links, children are downloading a number of resources, from the net without verifying this is coming from a genuine source or not. Fake apps, fake gaming apps. So that's why it's essential for us to tell them that, give them a blueprint. The schools have to give them a policy that this is what you can do, this is what you shouldn't be doing. That's what I felt, was essential to explain. And as a lawyer, I must tell you, there is a law in the country, as I said, and if there is somebody becomes a victim of cybercrime, can report it to the police and must report it to the police. Also, one can claim compensation in case there is a defamation or in case there's a loss of data. You can even claim compensation. That is also possible. So I think these are a few pointers I wanted to make. And while ePathshala and others were pointed out, as good resources, I think it will be helpful for schools to give a list of good resources to rely on, so that children don't download any and anything which they find on the net. I think that's a very important thing that we must share with you. Yeah. Any other thing that Nisha you'd like me to touch on at this point?
Yes, we'll definitely come back to you, Karnika ma'am. You rightly said that we must sensitize the children to be mindful and responsible digital citizens.
Absolutely.
Like earlier, a few years back, we used to have that moral science class and every once a week. So we can also have mindfulness class where we talk about values and etiquettes and ethics in the online as well as in the real world. The children think that they are behind the screen of the device and they can do anything. It is us as adults who have to be role models, number one, for them, and we have to actually mentor them, and we have to make them understand that their digital identity is as important as their real life identity. Thank you, Karnika ma'am. And now moving on to the other aspects of virtual learning. During the onset of pandemic, as we have said many times here before, that the teachers learned on the go. There was no time to prep and plan. This is for Malini ma'am. Ma'am, now that the schools are reopening after the break, and then we've had about 3 months of 3 months into this new learning space, how do you think you would do what things you would do differently once the schools reopen, in terms of processes, in terms of either infrastructure or even building capacities of the teachers? So
I'll take on from, I think Karnika has beautifully brought up all the things that we actually need to put in place. And I would actually like to reassure, there are so many parents who are watching us, I would like to reassure them that we are absolutely headed in the right direction. First weeks and days were hit and trial, and all of us trying to replicate the face-to-face classroom teaching in the digital model, which really doesn't work, because while you can physically ensure calling out names, doing other things in a classroom, in the digital platform, it's extremely difficult to hold the attention of the child and to keep him or her glued to the television or the laptop or the device that they're using. So therefore, first, we've created a separate timetable entirely. The whole school, the entire schooling community has created a new timetable. Timetabling is an issue in itself. We have around 100 teachers. To get them on board, creating a timetable is itself an issue. So here we had kept a few things in mind. One was, what is the kind of device that the child has? What is the device being shared by the child? Because there are siblings at home and the devices are limited. And with the parents working from home, their laptops anyway they are using. So, everybody's juggling with these devices and trying to match time. So we've created a timetable which is child friendly, which is ensuring that the siblings would, get access to time. We fixed the number of hours. In fact, we've said, in the enthusiasm to involve all the children of all ages, schools have gone overboard, getting even the kindergarten kids and the nursery kids into looking at the teachers. So we've decided that, you know, parents, there would be a parents meet with this little children so that, you know, the parents' issues are addressed, but the teaching actually happens from the secondary level. And that has been even promoted by the NCPCR, the Organization for Protection of Child Rights. Right. And while Madhu ma'am talked about the documents by the UNESCO, and the NCERT, I must also tell you that beautiful documents have been taken out by the MHRD as well as the NCPCR, which very categorically spells out the rules and the duties of the teachers, students, parents in this entire learning platform and the module. Right now, we know that the schools have gone home. You know, the children used to come to school. We have gone home. So therefore, the fact that everybody is vulnerable to different things is an issue we will talk about later. Right now, the timetabling has moved from entirely online to both synchronous as well as asynchronous, which means there are ways of getting in touch with the children through podcasts, through, you know, clips that we've shared, directed links of educational videos, which the teachers have tried and tested themselves, are being given while they are doing their classes to ensure that the child is not left on his own to browse for a particular theme. While it may be interesting for the child to do research, but a directed research is very, very important. But that is the reason why, you know, the parents were a little worried. Of course, ma'am talked about Diksha as a platform, Swayam as a platform. These are very, very safe, you know, platforms where it is just content that is being delivered. Why we did start with this content transaction, but we have moved you know, we've moved by a huge number of years in the way we are thinking about classes now. Entirely right through the summer vacations, all our schools conducted summer workshops in yoga, workshop in arts, and workshop in digital netiquette, you know, which meant that how do you protect yourself? How do you behave while you are in a class? And what are the do's and don'ts? So there were workshops done right from 3rd to 4th standard, right up to 12th standard. We have leveraged, used the Kendriya Vidyalaya modules that they have created on TV channels for children who don't have access. And of course, assessment was an area that we really didn't concentrate on when we first went on the platform. Parents were concerned about how do you know that learning is actually taking place? It seems to be a one-sided traffic. Teacher comes on every day and does some transaction of knowledge. And so did the child really understand? Did the child really learn? Is what the assessment actually helps us do. Getting a feedback, completing that feedback loop with, you know, formative assessment is what we are now moving on to, so that small portions are checked out. I have delivered a lecture, I have taught something, I want to know whether the child has learned, because that comes, that actually emanates from the new NCERT, you know, paradigm shift on learning outcomes. The stress is now on the learning, not on the teaching. So therefore, it's very important to understand that. So the cyber security policy that we were talking about, while schools had what are the things that the child is not permitted to do, but we never had such long hours of facing an online class ever before. So we have strengthened those, and we've actually sent out circulars to the parents saying, please sign and tell us whether you would be able to monitor. Do you have the firewalls at home? You know, put in your equipment so that the child does not move from allowed to the unallowed spaces, right? So I also wanted to tell our viewers that there have been specific mailing IDs from which the children now log in. So the entry of unknown people is not something that is happening now, because every child logs in with his ID, and the ID has his admission number or the roll number. Then we have attendance marked out after every class, so that the senior children who seem to take the classes lightly, whereas CBSE says there has to be 60 to 70% attendance in school, this is school moving virtually. So therefore, we've insisted on attendance and regularity. We've also ensured that our children come to class in uniform, which is also a sense of belonging. And we've done a lot of workshops with parents, face-to-face with parents, finding out what is the concern that they have and how do we help and how do we work together as a team. We've apprised the children about the digital footprints. While we talk about the negative digital footprints and how it's going to impact, Mr. Rakshit Tandon, of course, Ms. Seth would know. Rakshit Tandon is known for his passion for training school teachers and school children. His connect with children is amazing. The moment he comes on, I would have 1,000 children log in to just listen to him. So we've had numerous workshops, not only with the children, with the parents. And the parents' queries actually was such a revelation to tell us that actually I take the help of my son to do this online transaction. So, you know, while the parents are actually challenged, a lot many, the safety bit, if we bring in, I think that would be of great help. So that is more or less the brief of how we've tied things together. We brought in a lot more discipline, the discipline of the school, which kind of suddenly, strangely loosened up because of the digital platform that we were addressing each other in. We've tightened those, and that is what can ensure actually safe interaction between the teacher and the taught. Many times the children would log in with their fake IDs. They would say the devil's advocate or the Red Ranger or the, you know, the Mercedes guy and all of that. So all that kind of stopped now, because we've now really tagged every single child and we've encouraged them. We've told them that it is essential that you be here like you are in class, because there is no other relationship that can build between the teacher and the taught except for mutual respect. So therefore, whether it is teacher harassment, that is also an aspect that Ms. Seth would know. Teacher bullying became a big thing, and teachers used to come back in tears because they felt so humiliated when a child took off from in a different angle. So therefore, all those are closing in, tightening, because we've involved the parents, we are connecting with the children, we are having a lot of socio-psycho lectures being done with them, telling them that you are not out of school. It's just that we are reaching out to you. And this personal connect with the teacher is so important for you. Content you can find anywhere, but a mentor is hard to find. And a mentor who's concerned about your progress in life, is involved in your life, is the most difficult thing. And the guru has to be respected for what she or he is doing. And of course, the other concerns, I'm sure Nisha in the next round will take it up. Yes?
Nisha, I'd like to just make a comment. Malini has explained the points that they are trying to take up for security purposes. I'm glad that so much is being done, and under Mrilani, I'm sure there is a lot of new steps that you would be also adopting along the way. Since you have come this far, I congratulate you on the initiatives that you have taken so far, and we are all partners in this whole process. So whatever cooperation is required from different stakeholders, I'm sure they'll all come together and team up with their parents, teachers, or professionals. They're all trying to do their best. And you mentioned Rakshit is a colleague, and yesterday I was his guest expert. He's conducting this Gurgaon cyber police the training for the young kids across India. These sessions are ongoing, and yesterday I was the expert there talking to all his children, and it was hosted by the Gurgaon police and Rakshit himself. So I'm glad we are all part of the same fraternity. We do the same things. So I'm glad that he's a connect as well. And as regards, the point of netiquette, which I wanted to emphasize here, was that, during my PhD, when I was looking at online child protection specifically, I realized that we have to look at child participation. I want to emphasize that. Why? Because I have read the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And I realized that in India specifically, where parent dominance and parent control is paramount. There are countries like across Sweden, for example, where the violence against children has been completely banned, especially beating of children or violence at home. I want to stress on this because parents, they are also struggling with stress at this point, and today's viewers are parents mainly, so I'm stressing on this point again. We need to be very, very patient with the children. We can't expect them to behave the way we behave or we understand the world. So there will be tantrums, there will be dramas, and there will be, I don't want to study today, or I don't want to get up. But as parents and as teachers, I know we are all trying to be patient with them. But it's important that the parents specifically keep their patience, because they're not used to having children here all the time at home.
Absolutely.
So that should be very, very we have to be careful on that account. That's all I wanted to emphasize, that I've realized that the mindset of the kid is essential, to be understood, and their participation in understanding and giving them an empathetic hearing of what they are going through and how they want things to be, give them a voice is important. Hear them out is important.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Karnika ma'am. And it's so heartening to know that everybody, whether it is policymakers or organizations or educators, everybody is on the same page. And education in India has taken a leap by many, many years in these few weeks. Now, coming to another aspect of it, because, seeing the current situation on the ground, earlier the government had said the schools would open by 30th July, but now we don't know when they will open. And if at all do they open, then the old normal will not be the normal. The new normal will be followed, which is actually social distancing. So even in the schools, social distancing would have to be followed, where some kids come some day and the others stay back home, so that the class is not full of 30 or 40 children. So blended learning approach would have to be adopted, where the children are learning face-to-face a bit of their course material, and then they are doing work on their own at home. SEMCA has a lot of experience in the blended learning methodology, and I think you're also following it. Can you throw light on the blended learning methodology, Madhu ma'am?
Okay, Nisha, blended learning method is not a new approach, because I think open universities, they were already doing it. What is the blended learning means was, we were sending, if I talk about open universities, we were sending material to the students, and at the weekend we used to have those counseling sessions. So what has happened is, you are getting the material, you are doing face-to-face counseling, and of course you are doing the assessment and the practicals and so on and so forth. So blending is not only one thing, that you blend the technology aspect, that is the face-to-face and online. It is not only that, it is a blending of the learning theory, blending of the media, blending of the mode. So that is very important point of it. So I don't know how the schools now will do it, because blending is like, if you say, like you said, the schools will have staggered timing, schools will have staggered students, so one has to take a decision. So then the policymakers, the schools like CBA or NDAC or Gurgaon Public School Forum, and all of them, they have to take a decision and how they have to go about it. So maybe what we a definition of thermodynamics or a definition of a gravity, or what Malini is an expert on chemistry, so organic chemistry or whatever it is. Knowledge aspect can be done through online mode or through let's say various media or things like that. But when it comes to the skill part of it, when you do your practicals, especially the science practicals, how do you do it? There are virtual labs these days. So till the time we all create those virtual labs. At this moment, like if you see in the schools, chemistry has those practicals, physics has, biology has, and so on and so forth. So unless and until students will say to come to the lab, that is in a school, in a brick and mortar school practical room, how to do it. So that's a blend of a thing. So you learn those concepts online, and then You come for a certain time of a period to the school or certain day or a certain, and then you do the skill learning. So a very simple example, if I say, and I always give it, that I watch those shows, cooking shows. So what you are doing, you are learning how to cook a dish, how to bake a cake. So when you go to your kitchen, so you are doing the skill part of it. So maybe at the first time you are not learning, or you don't get that good quality cake with that good crust and inside also soft and so on and so forth, but the practice will make you a little perfect. So skill thing has to be done when you go back to your school or things like that. So that's what the blend is. Now, second very important point is that as teachers, all of us, we all are teachers, we need to learn how to integrate the technology. Which media, which method you have to integrate it, that's very, very important. Certain things, like a simple definition, can be taught or learn basically, I will use the word, learn through, like say, watching a video, right? But when it comes to a practical aspect of it, you have to do learning by doing. That's what we say. You have to have a different approach, different media for that. So that's what the whole blended learning, we need to be very clearly defined what blended learning is, and how and what to blend, that is important. So the teachers, actually, we need to learn how to integrate it. Like as Malini rightly pointed out, what we are doing is, at the moment in online, a teacher comes, it's my experience also, I'm not talking about, teacher comes and we are speaking what we used to do in a classroom. Maybe we in a classroom had a board, we have those models or charts, or the private schools, they have the privilege of having those smart boards and computers, but they don't have a projector. They used to take students to some other room, AV room, and so on and so forth. But here is an advantage in online learning. How teachers adopt or integrate technology in their presenting sessions or when they take classes. That's very, very important, and that's what the whole blended learning is all about, in my opinion.
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, in blended learning, it is a mix of pedagogy, content, and technology, where content is the king, and then you have to see what kind of pedagogy or methodology you have to adopt, and the channel is technology. Technology cannot be supreme. Content is always the king. Thank you, Madhu ma'am. And then moving on to Malini ma'am, post-lockdown, how do the schools plan to manage the students and the classrooms? So any plans on that as of now, or it is still being worked out? Ma'am, you will have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. So when the holidays were announced, we knew that June is the time when we would get to think about all that we need to do the moment the school reopens in July. So today, technically, all schools are open and we've started our online teaching, right? We have already reopened schools. So the physical reopening is what is left to be done. So I recall the Honorable Prime Minister's comment. He said, "Jaan hai to jahan hai." So I mean, that was so very simply put, and it conveyed such a lot. And parents today are very, very concerned because of the rising situation around us. Whether it's the red zone or the green zone, or we really can't say which child is coming from what zone. However, we can't believe that we'll keep the children at home forever, because that would be just fear psychosis. So we are waiting for the children to come back. The schools are deserted and the playgrounds are empty, and it's a great setback to the teaching community, because our energies come from the energies of the children. So therefore, it's so important for us to get the children back in school. So what we've done is we've worked out extensive, detailed SOPs. And you must appreciate that every school has its own infrastructural dynamics. So a common SOP of any kind will never work for any particular school, while the general guidelines can always be got. And we've got guidelines from, the UN, which talked about reopening of schools. And that is the first of the guidelines which came out, right? MHRD is working out on its guidelines. So we have school-wise, we worked out our SOPs. We've shared SOPs among schools in case there are things that other people have thought of. So whether it's SOP for arrival of the students, how does the child enter, SOPs for transport, dispersal, and the number of children who will be allowed to come into a school on a particular day, what are the levels that would come in first, and subsequently, how do we phase them out? Then we have prepared our schools for sanitation equipment, for materials which will last us for at least 6 months. The ADAM people who've been in school, the security have been trained as to how to look after the children when they report back. So the details of the general guidelines are still awaited because MHRD is working out on it, and CBSE tells us that the moment they get it, they would share it with us. But school-wise, all of us are prepared, and we were ready to welcome the children on the 1st of July. So it was a little disappointing when the Delhi government announced an extension of holidays till 31st. And of course, that was the need of the hour, and we appreciate the concern of the government. So preparedness is 100%. Now, our only worry is the infrastructural preparedness for continuing digital teaching, because all this while the goodwill of all the open sources that were available to us free during the lockdown period, be it Microsoft Teams or Google or any other WebEx platforms, now the moment the lockdown lifts, they're going to look at school for charging the schools. The LMSs are going to be expensive. And I also wanted to take on that point from Madhu ma'am's thing. It is now, we are really, it's a paradigm shift. We are now looking at self-directed learning for children, because experiential learning becomes important. We've looked at flipped teaching, because the content is shared, prepared, it's discussed with the children. So different methodologies, whether it's experiential, discovery-based, activity-based, all of that. So when the children come back, we are actually looking at first putting them onto the labs, which they have missed, and with social distancing, with the numbers controlled, and then continuing with our theory teaching through online digital mode. So that is the plan of action as of now. So yeah, I know I wouldn't really like to take hog all the time, though there's a lot to share. Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You're so right that school is not made up of walls. It's the children who make the school complete. And if we look positively, then we are finding opportunities in this COVID and the lockdown, where we are reimagining and reframing the education. Like I said, that education has taken a leap which of many years, which wouldn't have happened otherwise. Since we are actually pretty short of time, the last question to Karnika ma'am. See, the future of education, as we have all talked, is online or blended approach. So the schools would definitely need to develop ICT policy, which also includes data privacy and protection processes. As an experienced lawyer, can you broadly share the elements that could be included while framing this policy? And also, if there are any experts who could help the school in this initiative?
Well, I am your first volunteer to help you out with the policy making. That in any case, you will need if you want to volunteering by an expert, I am there for the first. I'm there to support the cause, definitely. What I feel any ICT policy should have, in a school, it needs to demarcate areas, whether the ICT policies in the current online learning environment, where the children are at home. Number two, when they are in the school premises, how the ICT policy needs to work. There would be some commonalities. For example, the do's and don'ts of the net. How they should be using the internet, the social media policy. What are the things like, I just give you an example. They are not supposed to write any abusive language in any forum whatsoever, because there are ways of expression. While they want to express any view or a comment, they have to be mindful of the language they use. There is a thin line between defamation and a blackmail or a threat and expression of a view. So that's just one of the very basic examples we often give, in terms of netiquette and how the school has to, formulate the ICT policy for code of conduct. But apart from that, one element will be code of conduct. The other elements will be what gadgets have to be, used, or what technology is going to be used. Non-sharing of password, for example. They're not supposed to use proxy names. They're not supposed to, say anything, do anything which is, for example, a lot of them use software to spoof identities. So hiding your real identity, if it is through a legitimate source like a school's VPN, we can understand. A virtual private network is fine. But if it is using of some technology just to play a mischief, hack into systems of the school, for example, hack into another child's account, is something which is not permissible. So ICT policy will have to have not only the infrastructure which the school is putting in place and the security compliances by the school students, but also their behavior, their code of conduct. That's important. And then if there are ways and means of putting up any kind of, for example, home assignments or school assignments to be done, even online tests being done, they have to maintain certain decorum. They cannot be cheating from their books, So how do we ensure that takes place? The school has to decide, whether it will be on camera, the exam will be strictly for 3 hours, or is it going to be off camera? They're allowed to consult the books. So ICT policy is a very wide term. It would involve multiple situations which a child experiences during school time, and how a school monitors the activities the students are supposed to perform in the online environment. So all the things like these would go into an ICT policy, and the data, what is the school collecting, for example, registration data. If it is taking away any registration data, if there are any cookies being installed on their systems, what are the personal data the school is sharing, taking away, for example, from the child. Is it taking the access to their contacts also? Is the platform really authorized to do that? Why should the school need it? There are n number of things. I can actually go on. The list will go on, Nisha. There is really no shortcut. There is really an exhaustive list of 70 to 80 points which go into it. So I've just culled out very few basic ones. But by and large, if I start listing out, the retention is another example, how long the school can retain data, and if there is a error on the school's part to maintain data, it should be the child should be able to update the data. Right.
I do understand that, but you've given us a very fair idea of what could be, because there were 2 questions from the audience, that what does ICT policy mean, and what is the safety element in there.
But so you can certainly count on me, Nisha and Malini ji and Madhu ji. It has been an honor and a privilege to be here on Cyber Peace. Thank you so much for giving us this interaction, and I look forward. This is a new beginning. Even with the audience, it's a new beginning. Please join us on social media handles. Be updated with whatever we are all doing, and let's keep connected with each other. Thank you so much. I will have to take your leave, Nisha. I have discussed that with you before. There is another webinar I have at 5:30. So I may not be able to take questions, but feel free to send a mail on the questions part. I will be happy to answer them off.
Last question was actually culled out from the audience questions only, and because I knew you had to leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karnika. It was a pleasure meeting you. Bye.
Because there are a few questions from the audience, and let's take another 5-7 minutes to answer.
We will definitely answer those questions because those are genuine concerns. I can see some teachers asking some very relevant questions, and parents, of course, wondering whether attendance can be taken. So I've tried to answer a few of them myself.
Thank you.
But, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So first is,
Nisha, Nisha, if I get my call, I have a call at 5:30. I will just go for 5-10 minutes and I'll come back. Okay.
Okay, fine. Nice. Fine. Actually, the session was for 1 hour and 15 minutes, but I think the conversations are so interesting, and I'm sure the audience is also benefiting. So we are going on and on. So the first question to Ms. Malini is that how a teacher asking this question, that how can I hold attention of the children when I am not physically present in the space?
So that is what we were coming to. We said taking a 2 hours class is absolute waste of time. You may have extra classes in school. You could hold the attention for 3 hours. Right now, we are talking about 30 to 45 minutes. If you take a look at the NCPCR policy letter that I was talking about, it's called Pragyata, and MHRD's policy on online learning. They have very clearly spelled out that at the pre-primary level, it should be asynchronous. Ideally, they should not be facing any device at all. Whereas they have given time slots of 30 to 45 minutes per class with a break of 5 to 10 minutes. And in a day, they should not do more than 3 or 4 such sessions. And that is about all. And if you also look at the NCERT's latest policy, where they gave you a weekly schedule of how you could transact your course curriculum, they talked about experiential learning. They talked about not things to be bought from outside, but creating the experience for the child from home itself. All your activities can be done with things from home. So while you are conducting a class or a concept is being taught, I think you can look at a couple of videos, links. You can do an activity yourself and show it to the children, ask them to try it out. You can take a quick poll, you can take a quick survey, and Google Form is available, Microsoft Form is available. So all these tools you actually now need to leverage, because Microsoft Team is like a reservoir, Google is like a reservoir. What you cull out of it is your capability. So I would suggest, and for all the teachers who are here online, it would be a great idea. And like I said, this is the time to discover yourself. This is the time to look inside, do a self-audit. Where do you think you're lacking? If I'm not able to hold the attention, what must I do? So the activities, all those little fun activities that you did in class, you can't do online. You can't clap your hands and say, everybody raise their hands, wave it a bit and let's do it again. We can't do all that now. So therefore, it's important that you look and research for tools. There are subject-specific tools. Mathematics has amazing tools. English has amazing tools. You can go to the BBC site, you can find a lot. So, this is an exercise that you actually need to invest in. It will make your lessons productive, and these lessons you can actually record and use for subsequent classes too. It's not a one-time effort. So what you invest in must be deep. What you invest in must be meaningful. It shouldn't be a one-off. So therefore, it's important. Yes.
In fact, you have answered another question by Ms. Rekha. She had asked that for teaching primary students, what is more effective, synchronous or asynchronous? So that has also been answered. Another question was that is online learning really essential for the kindergarten and the class 1 students?
Actually, online learning may not be so important, but the personal connect with you is important. You know, for the child who's coming into the school, nursery, you would have done admissions online, other classes you would have, and they want to connect with you. They want to know who's the class teacher. So a conversation with them, with their parents would be beautiful. And whatever exercises you're giving, it could be podcasts, it could be the narration of the lesson in an audio form where the child can listen to it anytime when the parent is free. So these are initiatives that you can take. You can do a storytelling session. When you meet them, you can do a little puppetry show. You can do a little skill activity. So they would love and wait for your classes if you just metamorphosize a little, because it is not everyday interaction which is important. But if you want to meet them every day just to say a hi, you can for 15 minutes in the presence of their parents, because little children naturally can't log in. So parents would be grateful. They'll be able to share their problems with you as to what the child can do, what he can't. Plan out activities which are easy on the parents, because you know parents are busy and we don't want to stress the parents out. They're already stressed out keeping their adolescent boys and girls at home, trying to create space for them. So let's be there as helping hands. Let's be there as support. Let's be there for the children to see us, because after all, for a child, the teacher is more important as a instructor than the parents, because they always say, my teacher told me to do this. So that is the important role that you have in their lives.
Yes. Thank you. In fact, most of the questions have been answered. There are a couple of questions on the security of Zoom, which I can answer being a cyber safety person myself. So we had said earlier also that picking the platform of your is your choice, whichever you want to pick. It depends. It also depends on the affordability, whether you want to pick an open platform or unpaid, or you want to pick up the paid one. However, coming to Zoom, there was an advisory by the government to there were about 10 to 12 do's and don'ts to be followed. So if you follow those do's and don'ts and download the latest the Zoom software, which is 5 point something, and which has the latest security patches, because there were 2-3 questions on Zoom which I thought that I would answer, since Kanika ma'am has also gone away. And the other is about safety of the Google and Microsoft platforms. By and large, these platforms have a very strong firewall around them, and they are absolutely reputed companies. So there's nothing impregnable. Everything can be, security can be broken. It may be a bank, it may be whatever. But by and large, these platforms do actually give a fair amount of security. I think, Malini ma'am, you will agree with me on this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they also have an institutional security. So when the school goes in for an MOU with Microsoft or Google, it is actually entering into a treaty with them saying their school content and personal details will not be shared on a common platform. So each child comes in with a personal ID, and it's a protected thing. So there is nobody from outside who can enter in unless the children or the parents have willfully shared some details of the link.
Yes.
But it is through email, the link is through email, and the child has to log in with his or her personal email ID. So far we haven't had any problems, and these are companies that are world renowned. So they will not stake security and issues on their reputation.
Absolutely. Then I also want to add that Cyber Peace Foundation actually conducts sessions for school, in fact the entire ecosystem, from the school students to educators to caregivers to policymakers, and also the lawmakers. Because a child safety is not only the responsibility of a parent or of the school, it is the entire community, the entire ecosystem which has the responsibility of the safety of of the child, whether it is face-to-face or it is online. And we can be reached out at CyberPeace Foundation for conducting these sessions. We also develop short video capsules and we develop content. And now I encourage the teachers who are a part of this session to join the eRaksha initiative. It is www.eraksha.net. It's a fantastic contest and very creative, and it actually helps to raise awareness and sensitize the students, the teachers and the caregivers on how to be safe and secure online. And it's not a run-of-the-mill you create a poster, you can create a video, you can create an app. Like ma'am, you were talking about AI, you're doing your doctorate in AI on child safety. So yes, that's also a part of it, you know, creating short AI programs about safety and security. So do go and log on to this contest and apply, and we'll be glad to have you there. And I think, Malini ma'am, anything else from you?
No, I just wanted to assure the parents that the schools will continue to do the good work that they have been. So we do need to understand that after the initial euphoria, a lot of parents had a few concerns about the quality, teachers, and comments on that. You know, we are vulnerable from both sides. You know, while you come, we come to your homes are visible to us. Similarly, we are visible to you in all forms. So I think a little bit of patience, a little bit of understanding will really help, because at this time, you and us, you know, are going to be working as a team, because we have a common mission. At the center is the child. So let us not, you know, walk opposite paths. The child will feel abandoned. This is the time to come together. This is the time to actually, you know, show the solidarity for the teaching community rather than, you know, find faults. Because schools have always stepped in adversity, and we've, I think, answered your call. So therefore, it is a time to work together. So let's be partners in this learning journey for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's absolutely, you said it, ma'am. Absolutely. And I'm sorry for the audience that we actually took longer time than we should have taken. In fact, we've exceeded by about half an hour. But I think the conversations were so interesting and were so informative that I'm sure each one of our audience is walking away with a big value add. So ending the session now, we thank the panelists for their valuable contribution to the discussion. And I'm sure these would have added so much of understanding and value to the participating schools and colleges. Thank you everyone for being a part of this crucial and informative session. Go to www.eraksha.net and log on to the contest. And signing off from Nisha Dua from CyberPeace Foundation. Goodbye and stay safe. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.